to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds.
And for freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm Paul Obatelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion, and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback, maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello everyone, thanks for tuning in again. It's definitely got that Yuletide feeling, not very far now. Or obviously for the Christians listening, for Christmas. It's all good, it's all that holiday festivities, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that I'm not going to get ill this year. The last three years I've actually been quite ill over Christmas, particularly twice where I spent the whole time in bed. There seems to be these viruses that are quite common around the time of Christmas. I'm not sure whether it's because people are so busy working and they're kind of stressed out waiting for the holidays, and then they have their holiday and their body's very relaxed and it just hits them, or there could be a conspiracy with the old attacking of Western culture, viruses thrown out by people. I mean, that might be getting a bit paranoid, but I'll be lying if I didn't say I wasn't suspicious of it a couple of times when you're out for the last 3, but I've been taking loads of vitamins and bits and pieces to boost my immune system this year, so I'm hoping I'll be able to enjoy it properly and have some festive holidays and meet friends that I don't see much during the year, and chill out a bit. So fingers crossed on that one. I'd like to thank Leo Zagami for coming on the show last and talking to us about the conference that's coming up that I shall also be moderating. And I'm truly honoured to do that. There's going to be some really cool guests there. This conference is going to be held Sunday the 10th of February next year from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. at St. Peter's Church in Clapham. It was great speaking with Leo about it, and I'm going to be bringing some guests on this show leading up to this event, some really interesting guests. And this is something I'm really pleased with, because this show has always been about a wide variety of subjects and bits and pieces. Admittedly and consciously, it's touched a lot on politics recently, because that's where I'm at the moment around my country at the moment. There's a lot of political turmoil and situations going on. And you can't help but marry the two sometimes, because it's the physical manifestation of what's going on as a collective group of people. So while I think it is important, you've got to look beyond the world that we're facing day by day in our daily lives. You've also got to question what else is out there, and I think that's an intelligent perspective to have. Sometimes when I'm really fed up with politics and stuff, I enjoy going down to the beach. Njord, the Germanic god Njord, is definitely a deity that strikes me, and I love the beach. And one of the reasons I love watching the waves crash, and I get it into my head that these waves have been doing that. It's the nature of this planet. These waves have been smashing into these beaches for so many years before, not only before our political ideas and confrontations, but before our civilization was created, before humanity was created. This earth has been behaving the same way. And sometimes you've got to pull out and just get a really broader perspective of where we are and what we're doing. And with that, don't get me wrong, I'm still on the street protesting and defending free speech and sovereignty and democracy in my country, and what I believe in. But it's about balance. It's about balance. And I think sometimes the tree huggers might be a bit guilty. I'll call them tree huggers or whatever you want to word it up. I'm sure you know what I mean. they can be bit guilty of not having enough urgency about what's going on before us. On the other hand of the coin, sometimes those that are urgent, have the urgency with that, perhaps are a bit too dogmatic themselves. So it's getting that balance. And I'm pleased that I'm taking part in this conference because it's actually helping me. It's reminding me a little bit that way and bringing us back to some of our earlier shows and stuff, which I'm more than happy with covering and doing. Today we're going to be speaking with Jason Liosatos. Jason is the author of The Emergency Transformation of Human Beings. He hosts his own show, Outside the Box. He's an artist and a passionate speaker. And, of course, he'll be speaking at the conference, and he's going to be speaking with us today. So I'm delighted to have him on the show. Jason, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm fine, Paul. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I feel really honoured because, obviously, because of the conference coming up in February, there's some great speakers on that bill. And I get to sort of take my pick and stuff, and I'm obviously looking forward to the conference myself, hearing your talks. But it's great to have the opportunity to have you on the show, where we can really have a good natter, and so our listeners can learn all about you. How's about to start off with? Obviously, it's the first time you've been on the show. Tell us about who you are and what you do, and what got you into it.
Wow, Paul. Phew. Well, I don't know who I am, really. That's the first thing. If someone comes in my studio or gallery and they say, "You Jason Liosatos," I pinch my cheek and say, "Well, not really, you know." So that's one of the things I think we've all got to do, to go off on a bit of a tangent, is actually let go of our identities and tap more into that part of myself. Someone asked me to do a talk recently called "Who Are We Really?" And I went on the stage with a mask with it written on there, "Who am I really?" And I opened the talk with "Who aren't we really?" You know. So I went through all the nuances and labels. Am I Jason Liosatos? Well, not really. It's just a label. Am I Greek? Well, not really. It's just a grunt. Am I from space? There's no boundaries. There's no borders. You know, am I a Christian? Well, some guy splashed me with water. That could have ruined my life and terrified me, you know. And I go through those things. So, but just to get back to your point, really, okay, yeah, I'm Jason. I've been through hell in my life, which has been my awakening, if you like. I make it clear to people that, you know, when I do a talk, that don't put me on a pedestal, because I don't know if you can swear slightly on the show, but generally you can be enlightened one day and wake up an asshole the next. And
no, you go for it, mate.
Was it okay to say that?
Yeah, we keep it real on this one, don't worry.
Okay, right. So, you know, I hold myself very lightly. So every day I wake up, I know there's a lot of work to be done. I never put myself on a pedestal. I'm just a guy from Barry in South Wales. You know, I've had a long checkered career. I've been homeless in Florida, homeless in Cape Town, shot at in Cape Town, nearly killed there for opening my big mouth about the truth and justice for humanity. And I've always had a real deep, bothersome voice in my mind saying something's horribly wrong on this planet. I felt like it from when I was in school, bored out of my mind, and I knew I was enslaved. I used to not go to school very much. I wasn't so much a rebellious character. I think I really just intrinsically felt, or if you like, remembered, that we're not supposed to be enslaved in offices and factories and have governments and people telling us what to do and domineering us. And then as I started looking into things and investigating and doing my own work and research, I realized that actually we are terribly enslaved, beautiful beings of great light and what's the word? We've got tremendous abilities, which I've had proof of myself. And I say that one of my talks is called Magicians with Amnesia. So and then I just went on to want to talk about this in the world. And then I started wanting to write my book. I was pregnant with my book, which is called The Emergency Transformation of Human Beings, which is about this kind of thing and about, you know, that there is a great epoch now, you know, a new epoch. And the word epoch is very, very interesting. It's from the Greek word epoche, which means stoppage, actually, strangely enough. And I give the analogy that I think we're at a time now in history, a tremendous time, where they're trying to microchip us, bring in 5G and trying to totally enslave us completely. And I think we're at a time of a great epoch where, as the word epoch says about stoppage, my analogy is that I think we're heavily pregnant with a new type of being coming forward. And I think that if we don't push and if we don't give birth to ourselves in a whole new way of being and living on this planet, Paul, I believe that we're going to have a horrible miscarriage and we'll be totally enslaved and further punished for not being who we are. It's like a great remembering, I believe, a great relocation from our dislocation, and we've been put to sleep, sedated by a big black spider. And I think that there's a great awakening globally now, and there's a smelling salts under every human nose. Now, whether we listen and act, and on my show tonight, I've got Roman Light, who's a great guy with the yellow vest movement. We can talk about that after. Yeah. So that's just further proof that there is a great awakening in the world now. But as I discussed with him earlier on, people are terrified because it's like being in prison. Sometimes you only don't know that you're in prison until you start pushing and digging a hole to get out, and then the big boot stamps down on your head.
I think it's just to interject.
Oh, I'm sorry, mate. I'm on a roll. Sorry, mate.
That's all right. Just because you mentioned a point, so I just wanted to grab that. When you're talking about like in factories and so on like that, where people, I think the thing is, I think generally human beings want to work, they want to get up in the morning and do something useful, but they want to do something that means something to them. Like if we go back to times before agriculture and stuff like that, we were hunter-gatherers, we woke up, we went and hunted and found food because we needed to eat. So it was a job we had to do, but it was a job that meant something to us. Whereas nowadays, it seems we're just a part of a machine that's nothing to do with us. We're just helping that machine function. And that's why people, they just don't want to do it. They just feel it's just, as you were saying, it's like slave-minded. And with this yellow vest movement in France, it seems to be like that they're kind of, once you sort of step out of it, you feel alive. And it's interesting that what's the guy's name?
Roman Light.
Roman Light. I saw his video the other day for the first time, actually. It's funny you've just brought him up. And I could completely relate to what he was talking about, that when you just suddenly stick your neck out and actually don't be afraid, just stand up for the truth and stuff. I can imagine it does make you feel alive. You feel like you're standing up for something that you should be,
Yeah. It's just such a huge subject. It's hard to know where to start, people have been, like I said, sedated really and enslaved purposely. That it's not a sort of a coincidence. And like you said, people are not doing anything that feeds their souls. And I spoke to Paul Levy on my show the other day. Great guy who wrote a book called Dispelling Watico, and about breaking the curse of evil in ourselves and the system. And we were talking on there and saying, if you're not doing something that feeds your soul, or doing something, I always say that we're all the midwives of the future, really. Midwives of our own future, and not only for our future, for the people who haven't been born yet. They're relying on us as midwives to give birth to something else now, because it can't stay the same. We keep on resuscitating the same Frankenstein's monster that's hurting and killing us and keeping us miserable. And it really is a global casino mental asylum now, Paul. And if we're not doing something that feeds us, like Paul said the other night, he said, we die inside. And what we're witnessing now, Paul, and it's happened so slowly, like the boiling frog. People are dying inside. People are giving up. I went to my friend's funeral on Friday. He had hung himself. Another friend a couple of years ago killed himself. And a lot of people I know that come in my studio here tell me that they want to throw themselves in the river. They've got to the bottom of the barrel. So we are in a time now that I think if we do, like I said about that birth, if we don't try and give birth to something else, we literally are all dying inside. We've become used to feeling depressed, and I talk about this a lot, but I'll just brush it out now, get it over and done with, because I say it a lot, sick of hearing myself say it really. But depression and despair and drinking all the time and watching telly all the time, and those feelings of despair inside, Paul, are natural responses, natural symptoms from a healthy body and mind that's in a system that's driving it bloody mad, Right. So I say to people when they say, I'm depressed, I'll say, good, that means you're still alive. This system automatically puts you in a really bad space within yourself, and we've got used to that. We've become used to being numbed. We've become used to being enslaved, and we've become used to being abused. We're all abused like little children, and we're being abused by this system from the moment we wake up in the morning, generally until the moment we go to sleep, because it's predicated on slavery and control.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you're and the divisions you're seeing, there's political divisions at the moment, and we can address those. But ultimately, I've said this, I've had people on this show that are off the far right. I've had people of the show that are on the far left, which they're normally the case. They're so far of the spectrum, they're pretty similar, And the thing is, I think what it is at the moment is, I say to them, if you have a genuine leadership, a genuine government, or someone that wants to make a good place for someone to make it work, it doesn't really matter where you stand, because you're going to make progress. You can argue your differences further down the line, and genuine people will acknowledge a problem and acknowledge a solution to that problem. What we're seeing at the moment is a completely different ideology that's right at the top of control. And we're sort of trying to solve it with problems that we're arguing about how to solve it, where we're not really addressing the big problem at the top. That's what I think that's confusing people about, and causing so much division within our society, because we're kind of blaming each other rather than blaming the instigators, you know?
Yeah, and there's an intrinsic thing in people, I think, Paul, deep in our souls, in ourselves, in our minds, that if we dare step outside the box, or if we're naughty girls and boys, because let's be honest, the governments, the popes, the priests, the presidents, the politicians have become our pseudo mummies and daddies. It's like we're almost like I can't even think of the name now, but. You know, I think that people know that if they try, it's very brilliantly done, by the way, Paul. I mean, I've tried to step out of the system many times. I've lived on boats. I've lived in tents. I was living in a car when I met Louise. If anyone goes online and presses in, you know, how I fell in love with a homeless man, it'll come up on Google. One of the papers did a story on us, and you know, I tried to live in my car. So I was always trying to get out of the system of slavery. But there's no options given to us. It's either rent or mortgage when you leave school. And of course, the systems, when I was writing my book, I was talking about slavery and the student loan trap, and I looked out of my bedroom window, and there was a spider's web over this light. And I thought, oh my God, that's genius. The flies were hurling themselves towards the light and having to go into the web. The spider cocooned them and ate them in 2 weeks. Our governments, what they're doing is the light is the job and the inverted commas success, and the people have to go into that web of the student loan trap to get to the light. So, I mean, slaves shouldn't pay for their education. So I think that we're in a very exciting time where we've got to break. The Toltecs talk about it. The Toltec shamans, they talk about breaking previous agreements, you know, and I think we have to start now knowing that we have to divorce ourselves from those agreements, like breaking contracts that have been so imprinted on us by our slave masters for thousands of bloody years. It's a concentration camp, which is become very normal now. The problem is, Paul, as you know, it's like, well, what do we do? You know, what do you do? I've been homeless. I've had terrible things happen to me. And only yesterday I posted something I wrote. There was a man over the road from my shop here singing to make money. He had a dirty coat on and he was drunk. And most people walking past would look down on him. He's begging for money. But the woman whose lovely clothes shop he's outside of, she's begging for money. I'm begging people to buy my paintings. I've got an art gallery. I sell my own work here. And the man selling donuts down the street in the shop is one. So we're all beggars, you know, we're all beggars. We've all become slaves and beggars, and it's a system of slavery, and we are begging now, like Oliver Twist. And that's why I'm interested with what's going on in France, because people are not so much saying, please, sir, give me some more. Macron, little Rothschild's boy Macron, he said, oh, well, we'll give you another 100, whatever it was, a month then. And just a little few while ago, he was saying, no, we will come crack down on you, you know. So, and most people say, okay, we'll have £100, thank you very much, and go back to work. But I can tell from speaking to people now that it's gone past that point now, and it's all bets are off, because they're saying, no, we want complete freedom now, and government is a sickness. If someone wants to control someone, they're sick, and this has gone on for thousands of years. It's the same cabal, and finally, people are coming around from the chloroform, and the amnesia is wearing off. Now, you know, when that happens, look out, because people are going to be really pissed off when they know that they've been lied to and cheated for the last 30, 50 years of their lives. We're in a tremendous, interesting time, Paul. I could go on and on and on. You'll have to stop me. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the UK now, it just seems to be. I mean, there's obviously, like you say, there is an awakening, which is very positive. I've spoken to so many people of different types, and it's just really. I'm optimistic, because there's all sorts of people that are willing to wake up and say, you know what, I've been wrong so much all these years. I'm waking up. I'm seeing more truth now. But there's also a lot of people, they just want to give power away. I mean, this whole EU thing, I don't know where you lie with the old Brexit and EU thing, but with this EU thing, it's like whether you believe in the ideology of a European Union or not, it just seems to be all down to, we haven't got sovereignty anyway, we haven't got that, just go with the most powerful, the people that seem the most powerful, that have the better idea of the economy, and that will be the best direct. There's no responsibility in terms of, well, maybe we need to stop and think about that. Maybe even if we struggle for a while, we need to take a grip of society ourselves. And this is kind of what the red vests are showing us. They're saying, remember, this is our society. This is our country. This is our world. It's not theirs. They're working for us. And in this country, we've totally been detached from that. That's the scary part. That's the scary part. The positive part is, as you're talking about, the awakening, that we're waking up,
Yeah, for sure, Paul, for sure. I mean, I think it's like being in prison. We all know it in prison, but let's say someone like you or someone else says, hey, guys, look, we're going to dig a tunnel. We can get over that fence. We don't know what's on the other side of that fence, but we know in our souls we've got to get out, because it's not only just a physical, this is a point I want to make here, and I'll be talking about this in the conference. It's not only a physical imprisonment. We've been robbed of not only physical power, but spiritual and psychic. We've been psychically and spiritually abused. And so it's a lot of things on many levels. And people know if they jump over that fence, it's uncertain out there. Like when you break free of prison in the old films, you might have to go and steal some washing off someone's line and you might have to beg for food. You might die, right? So people know intrinsically that this cabal can starve you out. They can say, right, let's crash the system. Let's get these people in line, queuing for loaves of bread. And I think with Brexit, Paul, I think the people who I've got relations who are doing quite well, and they didn't want Brexit. Okay, the people with a bit more money don't want Brexit. Why? Because they've got something to lose. If anything was to change even slightly, they're terrified. People who have got hardly anything, well, they've got nothing much to lose, so they know. But of course, Paul Craig Roberts, who I'm sure he was in the Treasury with Ronald Reagan, he knows his stuff, and he said, Jason, pre and post Brexit, we did a show, and he's on Wednesday as well this week, and he said, Lee, guess what? He said, they're not going to let you out of prison, Washington. They've clumped you together for 60 years. They're not going to let you out. So what you just said initially, just now, I think you said something like, what I thought when you said it, whatever it was that, yeah, Brexit's great. Whatever you do, Brexit or no Brexit, you're still in the same prison of control and manipulation. Now, maybe it's a good first step, but the whole system's got to change because it's just a different annex in the same concentration camp. Well,
this is kind of like the psychology that a lot of I call these guys the Ramonas. I don't call them all Ramonas because everyone's entitled to their opinion. But when I say Ramonas, I think you know the type I'm talking about. When they bring this, it's almost like they're using that psychology. It's not going to make any difference if we leave. And it's like, well, you're right. We've still got an utterly corrupt system and government in control. The difference is we can turn our guns to one direction. Say, right, now they're out of the picture. Now we're coming for you. We want a good government, honest government. And you can only keep going, can't you? You can only keep pushing for what you think's going to change. And that's all you can do. It's
Go on, Paul. The thing is, Paul, I think that's why I like people like Mark Passio. Okay, people are terrified because he speaks the truth so boldly, Yeah. But he's saying that they call the police and the army their dogs, because ultimately, without their dogs, the police and the army, that's what they call them, behind their backs, then they'd be wimps. So I've always said, if someone like George Bush would wee his pants if he was on the front line on a horse, I'd respect him a bit more if he had a tin hat on, going into the wars himself, himself as the leader, terrified leader. But I think we're at a tremendous time now where, like I said, sometimes you don't know the prison you're in until you start pushing against it. Now, what the LOS, and it's happened many times, we know, push against the police and say, wait, hang on. Now the police are battering their own and gassing their own people over in France. It's horrible what's going on. But guess what? Those policemen have got children, families, mortgages, and they're in debt themselves. So are they going to just throw their guns down and say, well, guess what? We're with you. then they'll be starving as well. It's a very, very well put together trap, And I've said many times, and I want to say it here again, and I might have said it at the beginning of this show, I've said for years and years and years, people don't know the great shock that's coming to them. And I've said it, and people used to laugh at me, and my own family thought, this guy's really gone nuts. But I'm afraid it's true, and it's coming to fruition now, that if you press against that prison wall enough and you go against the police hard enough, the tear gas will come, the pepper spray will come, then the kicking and the whacking will come. Ultimately, what will the government do? Let you just throw them out? No, they'll say, shoot and kill them. So it's never been any different to that. The queens and kings gone by have always said, off with their heads, shut them up, kill them. Imagine before the internet, there was people being killed all the time. So what we're at a tremendous point in history now where people are going to be, most people still know it, but they're going to be terrified when they know that the governments who they thought were their mummies and daddies and had their best interests at heart will ultimately kill you to shut you up and keep control of you. Now, that's a very interesting point to get to. So, and I think that's why they're bringing in the EU army as well. Because someone was saying there was armored vehicles in France now with an EU flag. Let's not forget, Macron didn't even have the French national anthem playing when he came in. I haven't seen it. I forgot to watch it again, but someone said there was the EU song playing. So, I mean, I think once you bring in an independent army who isn't French, who doesn't mind beating the living daylights so much out of their French brothers and sisters, I mean, I think that's changing now. But I'm not sure, all bets are off. But I've always known deep in my heart, and like Paul Craig Roberts said at the end of one of my shows, I said, come on, Paul, give people some hope. And he said, Jason, there's no hope unless you're prepared to go at the police with guns and batons and hang the politicians on lampposts, And I thought, oh, God,
Well, you can only rely on I think what we're seeing in the UK at the moment is we're clinging to democracy. This whole referendum and this new referendum, it's a pivotal point. It's like we're saying, is democracy in this country still alive? It's never been perfect, don't get me wrong. There's always been corruption with the media, and they've always had a hold of things. I think the internet has swung that a little bit, but it's that pivotal point where I think, people are saying, if we have this second referendum, that is blatantly just ignoring the will of the people. It's basically saying, oh, last time we don't care what you felt last, and we've had 2 years to try and change the paradigm, to really bully people and do that. We're going to have another referendum. People aren't stupid. They know what they're up to. And I think that's where we might see some big problems here, where people really start generally feel, you know what, it doesn't matter what we vote for. They're not going to listen to us. Where do you go then? What do you do? You can lie down and just ignore it. But when it still stings, yes, you're still going to be angry. And that's the problem we face, But there's, one other thing we can touch on, because obviously this is, all very relevant, but a lot of people, we look at the elites, the powers that's running the West or the whole world, in fact, and we can see definitely if people do their research, and a lot of people have done their research, we hear about this occult secret societies. Obviously, Leo Zagami knows a lot about this, and he's gone into depth, and it's there for people to research. They're blatantly magicians, if you like, occultists. There's that element to this elite group. So do we need to find that within ourselves to really compete with these people,
I'm glad you asked that question. And let me make it clear, I haven't got all the answers. I make it clear when I talk to anyone. I always say, if you think I've got all the answers, ask my wife. I can be a right asshole. I have a nightmare to live with, because I'm always in this agitated state that I know something's wrong. And before I just come to that question, I just want to say this as well, Paul. Poor people on this planet, most people feel intrinsically there's something wrong. Yeah. Even when I'm on the toilet, Paul, I think there's something wrong. It never leaves me because I know about it. And I said to my partner the other day, I said, the only real relief anyone ever gets generally is when they're having sex, right? Yeah. Because that's the only time when you completely blank off from all your thoughts and your worries about your bills and your debts and stuff like that. And then suddenly you lie down and it comes back. It's like, oh, I'm back. But,
or watching a game of football.
That's right. Or eating ice cream and chocolate.
Yeah.
you know, Paul, back to your question. Back to the discussion. It's a great discussion because I've been waiting for this point in time for 20, 25 years, Paul, where I can talk about this subject and not be seen to be such a lunatic, you know. I have had tremendous experiences in my life. I've been very lucky. And one of the main, I wanted to say this to people because it's relevant to what we're talking about here. I'm warning people for a long time now, more so recently, that we're magicians with amnesia, and we've been dislocated, dismembered from our real power and our abilities. Whether you believe Jesus was here or not, some sages have said, oh, guess what? You can do what I can do and much more. Now, a great mentor of mine years ago, before I had the experience I'm going to tell you about now very briefly, because it's very relevant to what we're going to talk about next. He took a anthropologist, Alexandra, a lovely lady, to Siberia to meet a shaman that he knew. And because she didn't believe in anything like shamanism about the mind can manipulate matter via consciousness and molecules and etc. And she didn't believe in any of that stuff. So they went and met this amazing gentleman, and he said, would you like a demonstration? And she said, yeah, bring it on. I don't believe any of this shit, you know. And he was down the other end of the room. He moved his hands, looked down, and at which her legs started going to jelly. She tottered, her eyes rolled in her head just before she fell over. He went like that, and she came back. And she was changed forever because she was astonished that actually people can manipulate each other via consciousness. Okay. Now then, back to what you just said now. Yes, we are in a time here now. And I spoke to Sasha recently about this and other people. Leo's very aware of these things. And Leo's going to be talking a lot about that. You know, I got attacked once before I believed in this stuff. And I want to tell people, I used to do a lot of karate. I was very fit. Felt I could take on anyone. And I knew about these things, but I'd never experienced them. And I put my nose in where I shouldn't have once with a very gifted man in Glastonbury in England. And I had a conversation with someone on the phone about him. And I said, look, she was living in his house. She said, he's sending me these things and I'm getting a stomachache. So I said, oh, rubbish. People can't do that. Don't listen. The guy's a nutcase. Get away from him. I didn't realize he was listening on the other line. About an hour later, I was in my room and I had met him once before. And he was about 30 miles, 20 miles away from me. And instantly, like out of the blue, boom, I felt him in the room. Now, let's remember, everybody, that I didn't believe this was possible. You would never have convinced me that anyone could attack me, a karate guy, from a distance with thought and hurt me and terrify me, okay? So suddenly, boom, I felt him in the room, and then it was as though someone was putting a huge bottle up my backside, right? And attacking me. I was terrified, Paul, and in terrible pain. I lay on the bed, and it was as though someone was really hurting me, and it was terrifying. I felt him in the room, his consciousness, and I was shocked. I was frightened for the first time in my life. And thankfully, it dissipated after some time. I phoned her the next day, and I knew where he lived. I was going to go and absolutely practice my karate on him and beat the living daylights out of him. He's only this little guy, skinny guy. He was older than me. And I didn't, because I knew I had then received the greatest lesson of my life, that the power of consciousness is actually more powerful than the physical form, because you can attack people from a distance. And back to what you said in the beginning, yes, there are magicians working for this dark force in the world above the governments, and they apparently have got magicians who can attack people. And now Leo will expound on this, I know. But I've had first-hand proof of that, and I do shamanic work myself with people, and I've had some tremendous experiences doing that and receiving help from people at a distance, good help. And I've seen miracles and felt miracles, Paul. And there's one thing for sure, and I warn people of this. I've been waiting for this time for a long time. We need to recalibrate, remember, and relocate back to those tremendous powers that someone like Jesus would have said that we've all got. You can do what I can do and much more, apparently, if you believe Jesus was here. I'm not saying he was. But we need now, it's going to another level, Paul. We need that. It's like the Lord of the Rings scenario. You're on a physical plane, and it's also like the Lord of the Rings scenario on a psychic plane. And if people don't believe that, I wouldn't do it, but I could prove it. I could prove it to someone. I could come and make someone aware that I was there. Yeah. And it's something that you don't mess around with. Leo will tell you. You've got to be very careful with this. But what people don't realize, Paul, is we're all doing it to each other anyway. The old shamans wouldn't look at people. They had caps and things like that. They didn't like looking into people's eyes because we're manipulating each other from a distance anyway. And we have become so dislocated from that. I've said many times, we're like Ferraris in neutral. We've got to step back into our power. And really, that is the real religion. If you look at the word religion, it comes from the word religare, which means to religament, to retie back to what we've lost. And that's where we are now. We've got to religament and retie back to those tremendous forces and powers in us. And we'll only remember from a dismembering, relocate from a dislocation, when we start realizing that we have. And most people are totally unaware of their power because they've handed it over and it's been robbed from them. So it's almost like a masochistic, sadistic symbiosis where we're handing our power over and being shafted, if you like. Yeah. And at the same time, it's being taken. And we are an abused humanity. And if someone was looking from another planet, which I'm sure they are, they'd be looking and seeing our world. It's an absolute mental asylum. And I've been worried about it for years, Paul, but thank God at last. I think it's a race now. Will we regain our power quick enough? Because the funny thing is, and the tragic thing is the faster we try and escape and re-ligament to ourselves, the harder the boot comes down on our necks, because they are terrified that people will re-establish their power. That's why they killed Jesus if he was here. And the same people that killed Jesus are the police of today and the army of today. So anyone that puts their head above the parapet, people intrinsically know, they're terrified, that someone's going to stamp down on them, and because everyone's one wage check away from being homeless, most people, so you say anything wrong, even worse when it goes digital and it's cashless and you've got a little microchip in your hand, then they just switch you off. So I'm telling everybody right now, if you don't hurry up, 5G's coming in, microchipping's coming in. If you've got a tiny window of opportunity now to create, and I've said for years in my writings, Paul, if we don't build a system independently of this one and government control, when it collapses, because it'll collapse right on top of us, and then we'll be running around like frightened chickens looking for dandelion leaves in the street.
Absolutely. I think as well, if you look at the way they are, they just seem to hate innocence. It's like anything, the innocence and humanity, they hate it, they despise it. And you can see that kind of reflecting in pop culture, and where kids are taught that it's uncool to be innocent. You've got to be almost kind of like perverted and dark and not good. And that's the cool way to be. And that, when you really look at that, you think, why is that? Why would we? That's not really in human nature. We like good things. We don't like bad things. Why are we being taught that it's cool to be dark and uninnocent? Innocence is a strength, and I think that is something what they kind of fear. I think they fear innocence. It has got a purity to it. It's got something that's very potent and strong. I will say, I mean, when I say that, it does make me worry, because you get these stories of these pedophilia rituals, even child sacrifice, and I think that's where it comes from. It's almost like them killing that innocence. It's that's where it worries me. I think that does go on. Have you had any? What are your views on that? Do you think that that's something that does go on?
Yeah, well, I've worked with Sasha, as you know. We've done a few conferences together, and I've had Leo on the show as well, and we've talked about the Vatican. Well, I'm very proud of Leo to be so brave as to expose the Vatican. It's like you're going against the greatest snake of them all, almost. And what bothers me a lot, as I've said to Leo, Paul, and you've probably heard me say, is that the audacity. Think about it. Okay, let's say the Pope let's say all the popes that have been in office, they've performed huge miracles in front of people, let's say, and healed the lame, and people getting out of wheelchairs and stuff like that. That is possible, by the way. But people have got to remember they can do it themselves. They don't have to ask a guru to do it. And if they could do that, I'd be more in awe of them. But these are people who have given themselves the rights and put themselves on a pedestal and said, we're only answerable to God or Jesus. So in other words, they can't be punished. Now, if you give someone that power, and they can't be punished for whatever they do, then guess what? That gives evil carte blanche. If someone is in that position and their ethical and moral alarm bell, intrinsic moral compass are all faulty, and guess what? You've got all these paedophile priests. You think of this, the people are priests. Some of them they're not allowed to be married. Okay. They're not allowed to have partners. I don't care if they're gay and they have gay partners. I'd rather see them having sex 5 times a day with their partners or their married wives than preying on young kids, right? I mean, I've got stories and listened to people. These some of these archbishops were preying on a home for deaf and dumb kids because the kids couldn't speak and they couldn't scream. They couldn't. But now there's technology coming out where these kids can tell on the people. It's like they can talk now a bit like this, and they've got ear aids and things. So what I'm saying is, yes, it is happening, and apparently it's just a big orgy sometimes in the Vatican, and they're untouchable. So McCarrick has been exposed, and Pope Francis now has been exposed by Vigano. I spoke to Leo about that, and Vigano saying it's time for you to step down. We want you to not retire, resign, because you were complicit. You let McCarrick off. You let him carry on being around young people. But of course, the Pope is guilty. Now, what can you do? You can't get him out. It's just like if Bush or Blair or Cameron or Sarkozy or any of these monsters, George Bush Sr., good God, they were just revering him at his funeral. The guy's a murdering monster, What
about like the Pizzagate scandal? Now, do you believe that was relevant or just a conspiracy, or was there something to that?
From what I mean, we've all got to do our own homework, and I've investigated it a bit, and it seems to me that, it was. And I do believe that it was a window there that people looked through, and they slipped up there. But there's lots of things like this going on for a long time. I went over to see David Icke in Torquay the other day. He was here. What an amazing guy. And I'm not saying everyone's got to believe in everything he said, but I went to see him 27 years ago, and there was no one there hardly. This guy was warning about Edward Heath and Savile years ago and talking about these things, and people laughed at him. And then look, I went into the Houses of Parliament, and someone showed me around the gallery there, and most of the people on the photos were paedophiles, and we got to the last portrait of the Queen, and someone told me that they're preying on children as well. Prince Philip. I saw a documentary about Prince Philip the other night. The guy was in the working with the SS, his sister's brothers. This is just incredible. Yes, there's terrible abuse going on with children. And Sasha did the ITNJ recent thing. I know people have been horribly, horribly tortured and abused by their parents or by their family. And it's happening right now. But this is the key thing here, Paul. This is the key thing, is that most people that we can talk to about these things, you get to a certain point and you talk about sodomizing little children, and they can't satanically, and they can't face it. Oh, I can't face that. Yeah, well, guess what? They are complicit in that carrying on. If you can't face that, that's giving evil carte blanche. So back to what I started with, if the popes and the politicians and the presidents can't be punished, it gives them carte blanche. Look at Hillary Clinton. Look at all that kind of thing, what's gone on with them and Bill Clinton, and the Pope. You can't punish them. So what happens, Paul, and this has got to be stopped, this has got to come to an end, when a Pope or a president or a politician resigns or changes hands, all that's previously been done is forgiven and forgotten. And that must change. These people have got to be dragged into the spotlight. And what's happening now, Paul, is evil is becoming dragged into the spotlight. And I've said this on every show I do, but I got to say it. There's a molasses slowness gap, a time lag between when injustices are done and when they're exposed. That time lag is closing now, and there's a quickening, thank God. So by the time something happens, now the spotlight of truth is on it. And these dreadful people who are controlling humanity are like Dracula. They don't like to be dragged into the light of truth. Absolutely. And they hide in the shadows, and they suck people's blood. They literally are vampirical on people's energy. It's a vampirical energy theft, psychically, physically, and it's going on and on and on. And now is the time, I'm afraid to say, that their time's up. And will they crash? My question is, will they crash the system? I've got Gerald Salenti on my show this week. He's going to talk about the big crash, the 9/11 of the money world, he's saying. Will they? What would I do if I was as evil as them? I'd crash the whole system to its knees, and I'd have people like me and you queuing for bread and no internet, no money, no nothing. And I hope that doesn't happen, but I've been warning for years that we've got to put a system in place independently of their system. So if that does happen, we can suddenly come together in a symbiosis and help each other and create something completely different. But that's what people want. People have had enough of slavery now.
I guess that could be a difficult situation for them because it's their system, isn't it? It's almost like they're thinking if we crash it, I think they'd have to be at their very last. They'd have to be pretty desperate to do that because, they'd have to think, there's a lot that could go wrong for them doing that against them. So I guess it'll be interesting. I think it would be, if it gets to that stage, then I think the people would have really rejected them, and they're kind of it's a pretty angry statement for them to make. Right, let's just crash it and make them suffer, kind of thing.
Yeah. It'll backfire on them. That's the problem, I suppose, Paul. I think you're right. Their backs would have to be right to the wall. I've often talked about it's like a train crash. Sometimes one of my analogies in my book was that, let's say it's like a train with humanity on, and only sometimes when it crashes, like a prison carriage taking prisoners somewhere. Only sometimes when it crashes do people get a chance to escape, and see the truth, And I think that's where we are now, really. I think we're all gazing out of the window of this train that we're on, this human slavery. For some people, it's easier, Generally, the more money people make, Paul, the less they care about people without money. And that's a strange pyramid which keeps the whole thing going. I know people are suffering badly. I've got people who go into the food banks. I'm lending people money who come in my shop here that I know who haven't got any money, 10 quid, 20 quid. It's getting ridiculous, But, I think that we are at a point now where to live in this world without being connected to our real essence is an amnesia which is completely unbearable for most people. And I think that inner agony and that inner dislocation in people is seems to me, from people I meet here all the time every day, seems to be coming to the surface now. And I think what's going to happen is that agony gets to the point where people can no longer stand to be dislocated from themselves. So this, fear is very paralytic to consciousness. I've said it many times. Fear is paralytic to blossoming and development in humans, psychically, spiritually, telepathically, physically. And I think that the system we're born into is so fear-based on debt and bills and rushing to get to work that it chokes people off from themselves. And what it does ultimately is it turns people on each other and turns us on ourselves. And hence most people are drinking a bottle of wine every night because they literally can't stand it any longer. But that's where we are. I think we're getting through the layers of ourselves and we're becoming less and less burdened and lighter within ourselves. I like the Russian doll analogy, those Russian dolls where you take one off and there's another one underneath, you take it off and there's, and I do believe we're removing the outer layers of ourselves now, Paul. And I think we're getting to the point, that's why a lot of more people are doing ayahuasca now. I've done it myself, and it's like it rips you to your core and strips all the layers away from you, and you come back cleaner. And and like I said, we've got to take the layers off ourselves and get back to that light inside ourselves, which has been numbed and almost snuffed out, I would say. I think our consciousness is, if we're not careful, is almost going to be snuffed out. And I do think we're at the end of a great era of suffering and struggle for humanity. And when I say to people, I give them a warning and say, listen, there's people who are waiting, who aren't been born yet, are waiting for you to change this system because they're going to land here soon. And not only that, look at our ancestors who have suffered for hundreds, if not thousands of years, who have suffered to get us to this point. And I do believe we're going to have to learn a new dance, Paul, and whirl a whole new world into being. And well, I think it's like a wave we're surfing in on now. If we don't ride it properly, I think it's going to crash and burn us up if we're not careful. But it starts by us looking in the mirror and remembering ourselves and getting a taste of ourselves again. And that's what it does. Like people do meditation and they do a bit of spiritual work, and it gives you a whiff of yourself again. And I think people are desperate to get a whiff of themselves again, and come home. It's like we're homeless, really. I've said we're homeless, we're homeless from our spirit,
I think that sometimes the way I see it is the way we've been tricked into thinking we need the things we've got today anyway, which a lot of it is a load of bullshit. Like if you think I remember when I was a little boy watching a film from, on this tiny little square television. It might have even been black and white. I don't know if I'm that old yet, but it could have been. But just a small little box in the corner of the room. I remember enjoying films on that little box. Now we've got these huge TV screens. There's no way we'd want to go back to that little box. We'd think, you can't watch a film on that, but you can because we used to. And we used to in fact, the best films, the most legendary films come from the time where we did watch them in a little box like that. The TV series we used to love. And we're tricked into thinking that we need this huge screen that our masters are giving us. We don't need any of that stuff. And I think that's kind of part of waking up as well when we think, life would be miserable. Interaction with one another is something that we're probably missing. I mean, the internet kind of does it and takes it away at the same time, but it's I think that's kind of where we need to look, isn't it, as well, that we're a big tribe at the end of the day. We don't really need that system. We just need each other. That unity I think we need to refine, which maybe we are. Maybe that's what we're seeing. It certainly feels that way when I went to a Brexit protest the other day, especially one that the media demonized, full of lovely people, old patriotic ladies and gentlemen there waving their flags. But really, a guy, he was almost like a bit teary-eyed when he saw the flags and hearing everyone cheering. He said, look at this. This is fantastic, isn't it? Those sort of people. And there was a unity there. You kind of look among and you think, yeah, we'll take care of each other. We know what's going on,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Paul, because the system automatically... and it's like, oh, God, Jason's demonizing the system again. Well, let me tell you, everyone, dead right I am. You're dead right. It's time people shone a light right in the face of this damn demon, Yeah. And it is. We're dislocated from ourselves. We're dislocated from each other. This system's so fragmented, and it keeps us away from each other because I think we're all in such an agitated state of fear and secret despair. It's foolish to keep it secret because most people you speak to, morning, But we need to talk about it. But so we need to get back to that thing, And I'm just looking at one of the headings in my book here. Our system is sick, diseased, dying, and killing us. I thought, my God. But it is, and I want to just make a quote out of it here. The whole system is a corpse which needs to be buried before it further contaminates this struggling society and planet. And I just want to quickly read this out of here because I forgot I wrote this. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's probably true, I said a disease or dis-ease in a body generally has a location and symptoms, the symptoms being the warning signal which gives the diseased body a chance to restore that part and recover, often by addressing the thing or lifestyle that has caused it. If we ignore the symptoms and warning signals of a diseased body, whether it is a human one, societal, financial, political, a global one, it will, like a diseased body, consume and kill us. And, that's where we are, Paul. I think we're all feeling this, like I said in the beginning, that the people that come in here and say to me, I'm depressed. I had a guy rang me, contact me, I'm really depressed, because I talked to him about it before. I said, that's good. If you weren't depressed, you'd have to really worry about yourself because that is a symptom of this system, which is creating that disease inside ourselves. Now, what we've been doing for a long time now is just carrying on with that thing. And we've been, like you just said, about watching the telly or hugging each other or telling each other we love each other. Most people, I said to my partner the other day, because I'm so busy making money to keep going, like everybody, what it does is it almost turns you on yourself and turns you on your family. And if you're not careful, and I know from speaking to other people almost, their family becomes their enemy because they're working and slaving their butts off and almost killing themselves having heart attacks to keep paying for that house, keep paying for that family, keep paying for that food. And you can almost become an enemy. They can become your enemy, Excuse me. And, I heard a banker recently talking about kickstarting the economy and, but it's like trying to give a dead corpse and a dead body an electric shock to resuscitate it. This system of loans and debt and fear, truthfully, Paul, is killing us. Yeah. And so I have this conversation with a lot of people. They say, but you can't blame the money, Jason. It's not the money's fault. But I say, well, the money and the system of finance actually, presses the worst buttons in people. And I always come back to my original analogy. If I've got a gold bar on Trafalgar Square and I hold it up and I say, no one's going to punish you for whatever you do to me to get this £10 million out of my hands, you'll never be discovered and no one will ever find out, And it's a bit of a brutal analogy, Paul. But I say to someone, right, who's going to spit in my face? Well, everyone would spit in my face. Who's going to kick me in the balls? Well, most of them will kick me in the balls. Let's take it to level 2. Who's going to cut my finger off with this machete to get this 10 million quid? Well, if no one was going to be discovered, most people would, or a lot of people would. Okay. And then let's take it to another level. Who's going to kill 1 million people in Iraq, right? Who's going to kill someone's whole family? Who's going to drop a bomb on someone? Who's going to sell bombs to Saudi Arabia and train the Saudi pilots in England? And who's guilty when those little kids are starving, So it's this system of ethically compromising ourselves, and the system is terribly ethically compromising. But as I've said, there is a portal now of opportunity available for us. And I do believe that I've said many times, it's like, a butterfly doesn't fear its transformation and changing from a crawling caterpillar to a butterfly. And I think that's what we've done, countless thousands of our ancestors have, struggled and suffered dreadful circumstances and bravely pushed ahead to get here now, to get us here now. Gandhi's salt march. I'm not saying Gandhi was perfect, but his salt march. I believe the yellow vest thing is a bit like the salt march. It's and it is an emergency. I keep my name of my book is Emergency Transformation. And the word emergency, I can just tell people about it now. The word emergency means urgent occasion requiring immediate action. So it's no exaggeration to say there is a huge emergency on this planet now. And I'm delighted to be here now. And because I know why I'm here. I'm here to talk about this, And I think people have been going along on automatic pilot like herds of cows. It's like we're on this huge passenger jet and it's on automatic pilot, and all humanity is behind the cockpit shouting, something's wrong. Stop, but it's on automatic pilot. So whatever we do, it just keeps coming back to the same thing. You have a little demonstration and it comes back to the same thing. You kick one member of the government out, another member of the government comes in. It's the same prison. You're still going to work and everything. So a great mentor of mine years ago said that we're at the inception of manual override. And I believe that's where we are now, that we're in the situation where we need manual override now, where we can grab hold, like kick the cockpit door down, grab the controls and say, this can't go on. There's people waiting to be born who don't want to come to this, We need to change direction. And, it's like a ship, analogy of a ship. It's like all the humans are down in the engine room, and the tyrannical, psychotic captains like Mutiny on the Bounty, they're shouting, change course, stoke the boilers, and the people down in the engine room are going, oh, screw this, we're sick of this crap, And then suddenly they all just put down tools and say, guess what? We've just discovered something. You psychopaths on the bridge, there's 4 of you, right? And there's millions of us down here stoking the boilers. If we say no, we say no. And that's the Roman Light. We're going to be talking about that tonight. I spoke to him earlier, that they're our employees. Right? We're the employers. Yeah. It's like, hang on a minute. We'll stop this and we'll change the course of this, It's just very sad, Paul, for me. And I know I'm a bit dramatic speaking about this, and I'm sorry for my enthusiasm, everybody, but it saddens me so much that we've got to this point in our human history where we've become so enslaved and so helpless. That we've got to try and remember our power again. I mean, good God, what happened to us? It's a crime against humanity. I can't get over the fact that it's still going on. I wake up in the morning and think, it's still going on. I see the people in the traffic jams in London with those terrible looks on their faces. They're all on the tube station, scared to look at each other. Brothers and sisters, one dislocated.
Yeah, no, I completely resonate with that myself, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners do. We are sort of around that time. Is there anything you'd like to, obviously we've got the conference coming up, and anything else basically you'd like to let everyone know about before we wrap this up?
Well, the good thing is Paul, I'm an easy guest, you just put the mic in front of me and I don't shut up, So my apologies if I've gone on a bit. But no, if there's anything, we got the conference coming up in February. I'm doing all sorts of things. I usually organize more conferences than I do, but I've had a bit of a break, people can get my book. Go to my website, www.jasonliosatos.com. You'll see my shows on there. Outside the Box on YouTube, Jason Liosatos. You've got my shows there. I've got some great guests lined up this week. Get my book on my website.com. And really, I just want to say to people, don't give up on yourself. We can easily blame ourselves and say, "Oh God, it's our fault. We've been so pathetic." And in one sense, we have been pathetic, but sometimes we have to lose everything to find everything. I've been homeless. I've been helpless. I've been banged out on drugs. I've died twice. So now then, one caveat though, Paul, before I go, is to say that although we mustn't blame ourselves. And you can say, well, actually, we've got to this point in our history where the government has become so cruel and brutal, where that is the very thing that's waking us up, which is good. But let's not thank them. We shouldn't have gone to sleep in the first place. So it's a great lesson in history and our humanity that for thousands of years, we've allowed a cabal government to control and brutally torment us, actually. And that is over now, and it's got to change. And the sad thing is, it's become so embedded that people feel almost helpless, and they don't know what to do to even survive themselves, and you still see everyone outside Buckingham Palace waving their flags at that bloody Queen. It was the Queen Bee, and my goodness me, I don't know, Paul. I just hope that we wake up fast enough. I've got great hope for humanity, and I know there's many other levels to us than this, because I've had plenty of proof of that myself. So this is just the physical realm, and we're like people on crutches. We must throw our crutches and wheelchairs away and say, actually, we're not going to be paralyzed anymore by this fear and these lunatics. And let's come together and for goodness sake, change this whole thing. And because at the moment, there's no doubt it's a prison planet. And that's not being negative, it's being damn honest. And we could have a virtual utopia here, Paul. Literally. People say, "Oh, you're talking about utopia, Jason." Yes, I am. I think we could, if we can tap back into our power and get rid of this scum that's controlling us and the evil which is trying to hurt humanity. And we've got the power to do that. Don't anyone ever forget that. You've got so much power. You'd be terrified if you knew.
Yeah. No, well, that's if you reach for the stars, even if you get to the moon, you've done something, right?
Well, there's an old saying, better to throw your spear at the moon and strike only an eagle than aim at the eagle and strike only a rock.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been brilliant speaking to you, Jason, and I'm really looking forward to your talk at the conference in February. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for coming on, and speak to you again soon.
And thanks for your great work, Paul, that you're doing. You're doing tremendous work, and you're smelling salts for people. And I want to say thanks to you for being you. You could have easily shrunken down into the shadows and not. So thanks for stepping forward and being you, Paul. You're doing great work and helping a lot of people.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.